What's up, everybody? How's it going? Thanks again for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. Well, guys, as we wait for our guest, I guess she's running a little bit behind right now. I have a few announcements I'm going to make, and I have some new followers I'd like to welcome over to the BG-Cast family on Rumble. So, one of the biggest announcements I'm going to make right now, I'm at a point where I've just kind of reached a boiling point with a lot of things. Not really in a bad sense, but I feel this really big internal divine fire at this point in time that's burning inside of me to do something about this. So, the number one thing I'm going to say, I kind of announced it on X and on Facebook earlier today, is one of my main purposes here now, at least for the time being, is going to be a unified front for the conscious collective. I've been hitting this kind of hard for the past 2 seasons. I've spoken about this ad nauseum, that the most obvious solution for us at this point in time is going to be a unified front. Our community has become too divided. The waters have become too muddy. At this point in time, I believe we have two things going on. We either have some kind of infiltration and we have these organic instances that are occurring. So I have two really big things in the works for next year. I am not going to lead on to exactly what they are. Not just yet. I will probably be announcing the first thing mid-February and potentially the second thing a little bit sooner. But know that I am kind of dipping my feet into the realm of public speaking. And I'm going to be dipping my feet potentially into the political sphere. And I know what a lot of you are saying. I know what a lot of you are thinking. At this point in time, yes, my personal philosophy will always be anarchism. And that's never going to change. However, after my show with Corey Blair, I got to some thinking. And in a lot of ways, it inspired me to kind of put a foot forward in a strange way. So this is what I'll be doing. This is just a little bit of an announcement. No, Andrew, not Stephen for mayor, but I will be running for Lakewood, Colorado City Council. So I'm just kind of putting my foot forward a little bit on that. We're going to try a new, fresh face. And at this point in time, that's something me and Corey kind of agree on together, is we're going to have to play it like Zelda. I guess that's the best way to put it. We're going to have to get the keys to the castle through playing the game. And if that's what I'm going to have to do, that's what I'm going to do. So nonetheless, guys, that's my two major goals right now. I am trying to get this conscious collective on a unified front. Because if we became unified and we started working together, we would be so immensely powerful, it would be ridiculous. And this is ultimately what is feared. And I think that's why there's been such an attack, through misinformation and all of that stuff, on the conscious collective and this infiltration to keep us spinning our wheels and not really accomplishing anything. Nonetheless, I have my guest in the waiting room. Let me just welcome these new followers over real quick. All right, everybody. I have a couple of new followers who joined after last week. So we got Jules T100. I want to thank you welcome you over to the BG-Cast family. Thanks for checking me out and giving me a follow. And we got the Sultan. Okay. Thanks for coming over, man. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Nonetheless, I have my guest in the waiting room. So me and her have kind of been chatting a little bit. She agreed to do this show last minute. I originally had her booked in January, But my guest for tonight, my original guest, had kind of an emergency that he had to deal with. So Sarah was awesome enough to decide to hop on with me and do this show. So I'm going to give her little introduction, and then we'll bring her to the stage. So, guys, we have Miss Sarah descending, also known as Sarah Elizabeth. So she is a multimodality practitioner working in the overlapping space of the shamanic, quantum, and Akashic realms. Called by the Holy Spirit into this alchemical work, Sarah works in a free will container in which sacred sovereignty is restored and remembered. I have nothing bad to say about that. You know how I am about sovereignty. So, guys, let's welcome Miss Sarah to the stage. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks
Can
for
you guys
joining
hear
me.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What were you going to say?
Okay, it's been a little laggy.
No problem, no problem. That's all good. That's all good. No worries. We'll make
I'm
it
just
work.
waiting for a second. The Wi-Fi seems a little glitchy on this. I've just done. Okay. I can join from my phone if it continues. But I'm so happy to be here. Are you able to hear me now, Stephen?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you. And we've got a lot of cool things to talk about tonight. But first, this is something I ask a lot of my guests, when they come on the show the first time, because to me, at least in my eyes, everybody's journey is precious. I think that's the beautiful thing about this whole experience is, we all have our own subjective journey that in our own subjective, I call it the burning bush moment, that kind of made us open our eyes a little bit wider and start to see in between the lines and kind of dive deeper into the nature of this existence and this reality. So, Sarah, if you do not mind, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how your journey started to begin and how it led you to where you are today?
Okay. If we want to talk about like a journey of awakening, mine was, well, I wrote a post a few years ago about like, was I ever actually asleep? But I would say there was gradual from about the year 2000 until 2020. I had gradual stages of awakening. In 2017 or 2018, I was chronically ill with a very, very painful condition that was, I no longer identify with the diagnosis, but it was called interstitial cystitis, painful bladder syndrome. There is nothing that modern medicine offers for it. It's not infection, but it feels like a terrible chronic UTI for women or people that have experienced that. And it was the sacred wounding that I actually personally needed. It catalyzed me into looking at the world in a different way and finding I can't say root cause because we have multiple, everything is nuanced and we're so layered, but it led me to digging into energetics and why would pain and why was this happening? Oh goodness. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. I can see you just fine.
Oh, your picture went away. I don't know. I thought maybe it dropped. That's fine.
No. I was giving you the stage. Yeah, I was giving you the stage. No problem.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay. Yeah. So 2017, 2018, I was diagnosed with this very painful condition that conventional medicine has nothing to help with. It's not an infection. It might be autoimmune. They're not sure, so on and so forth. I'd already been on the kind of like biohacking, like trend of let me figure out what I can do to feel better through food or nutrition or supplements, so on and so forth. Since my youngest child was born in 2013, her pregnancy was very difficult for me. It was depleted. I had 4 kids. So like nutrition and wanting to feel better started for me in like 2012, 2013. And then I felt much better and looked the way I wanted to look 2017, 2018, and this chronic condition came on and really affected my life. And what I learned, to be quite frank, was that I was pissed off. The body speaks to us. The body speaks to us, and having some kind of pain in that region speaks to anger, resentment, many other things. And so it was what pushed me into looking at the world in a different lens, which I began doing, and was coming to understand energetics, some kind of maybe more mystical Christian beliefs, and kind of just beginning to play with esoterica a little bit. And then 2020 happened. And for the first time in many years, I was not doing the school runs for 4 children 5 days a week. And the world kind of stopped. And as the world stopped, I had enough time to look at things a little bit more closely, a little bit more intensely. And my awakening, my full awakening, was intense, accelerated, and rapid. And I just kept my cool. I look back at it now, and in most of 2020, I would go for walks in our neighborhood and regularly could see rips and tears in the fabric of our reality and the fabric of space-time. I saw 2 suns for most of 2020. Most of 2020, the moon was not where it was supposed to be. And I just continued. It was like one day, I'm not sure how to describe it, but just one day the veil was lifted. I had my own personal apocalypse, and I've continued. Everybody kind of gets into maybe the love and light part of spirituality first, and I had to move through and initiate through that, which I did pretty quickly. But so that's a little bit about my story. We can definitely talk more if you have any questions, but
that's very cool, man. So one of the biggest things you said in the beginning that just kind of, resonated with me a lot was, was I ever asleep? And I feel a lot of us were born this way, actually. And it was just coming into the remembrance and the realization of that fact.
Exactly. Yes. I write about that a lot. The remembrance. I've always been this. This has always been who and what I am. It was remembering. It was a process of coming into the remembrance of it. Exactly.
I like that you see it that way, because I'm very Gnostic on that. I call it that we're coming out of the forgetting and we're entering the remembering at this point. So I think, to me at least, that really that at least in my experiences and through a lot of things that I've been through in my own spiritual evolution, that just resonates at a higher level than the awakening. Because I was even talking with somebody about this before, because it's not that you're awake, it's that you're aware. They did not like the term awake. And everybody has their own way of describing it, I guess you could say. But no, I totally feel you on that. And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about just for a second is your biohacking. So and how our body speaks to us. I can't tell you how true that is. So I believe in biofeedback too, and I use it. Especially being into health and fitness like I am. And it is very interesting on how these energetic and these emotional issues will manifest themselves in a physical sense. And because that's even something we look at through, the subtle body system and the emotional body system as well, and how our physicality is ultimately tied into these systems also. So that's a really cool thing that you brought up. So I guess let's kind of dive into this for a little bit. So I know you do quantum healing, and I know you do a lot of Akashic Records healings as well. So what kind of led you down that path into becoming a healer? Because I always feel like a lot of us, we're all kind of healers to a degree, and we have our own unique ways of doing it. And what kind of led you into the quantum healing realm and the Akashic healing and all of that?
Yeah. So like I was talking about, the chronic condition that I was diagnosed with was really the catalyst for getting me into looking at alternative healing methods, which are really our original healing methods, many of them. So I started with initially wanting to help myself feel better and be more functional for my children. And so I got into initially a modality that many have heard of, the emotion code, body code, belief code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. And one of my offerings is loosely based on that basic template that he uses. And that is that modality, which is not listed on my public store right now, but is available to members, soul guided emotional release and energetic repair, is really, really focused on connecting to the wisdom of the body and the soul or superconscious together, and allowing the body to speak to us and identifying what's going on. I always talk about spirit into matter. And then like how everything there, like you were saying, there's no separation. There's no separation between the physical body and the energy system and all of the energetic bodies that we also are. So kind of started there, and then very quickly developed an interest in shamanic work, like an earth-based. I initially was really feeling called to earth-based work, and was really, really enjoying learning about shamanic journeying. And I had a lot of success with that. And I want to be clear that that is an open practice. It's available to everybody. If anyone's interested in resources, I can share some later. But I had a lot more success with that than I did basic meditation or typical meditation, because as you can see, I'm very kinetic. I move a lot. Part of my own energy work is moving. And I had trouble trying to learn how to meditate because I would feel like I wasn't following the rules. And this other modality for me, because I was able to move, and it wasn't quite as, it didn't feel quite as rule-based or restrictive to me. And so I was doing that. I was learning about that, doing that. And the Akashic Records kept calling me. And I resisted. Every time I would open the app, like the app to the library, the Hoopla app, it was insistently for months recommending me one of the Akashic Records books by Dr. Linda Howe, who was, she was where I initially did certification and training, even though I have since developed my own methods that go quite a bit beyond what Dr. Howe teaches. But yeah, so the Akashic Records kept calling me. When I was a little girl, 9, 10 years old, my grandma actually had all kinds of books about Edgar Cayce, and I was a voracious reader. And I remember one Christmas break, probably 5th grade, maybe 4th, reading all these books about Edgar Cayce and his Akashic Records work when I was, in 4th or 5th grade. And as I read them, I thought to myself, I remember all this. This is true. And promptly went on after Christmas break, being 9 or 10, and didn't think about it again until a few years ago. And as I kept telling this book, no, I don't need to read you. You're not the kind of work I do. I remembered all of this stuff. And it's actually been revealed to me that one of my soul incarnation plans and agreements was to be a conduit stream for the true quantum Akash. And that I had that initial remembrance when I was a child reading my grandmother's books, and then, forgot for another 30 years or whatever. And so I went kind of like emotional release, connecting with the body, shamanic work, and then into the Akash. And from there, all of the quantum stuff has developed rapidly, and I spend many, many hours a week clarifying and refining the quantum clearing and the energy repair stuff that I offer. So, do you have any questions?
Well, no, that's very cool. That's very cool. One of the interesting things that you said, that I definitely resonate with is just simple meditation, because I myself kind of moved out of that also. And I think what you kind of brought across there is a really good message, because I think a lot of people feel that they are tied to that rigidity. I think a lot of times we get, in human nature, we get caught up in we get hypercritical of logistics, and we feel like, we have to do these things this exact way, or we're not doing them right. But one of the biggest things, you know, I've at least said to a lot of people as well, is it's the intention behind it. And you have to find like your own way and your own practice. And I think you really laid out a really good example of that, how you found something that worked for you.
Yes.
And, you know, yeah, a lot of people get discouraged with meditation. I've had my quirks with a lot of the ways it's described. That's why I've tried to like help people along. But that's kind of a little bit why I'm a Kriya practitioner, because for me that works better than stationary meditation. So I definitely resonate with that. I think it's really cool on how you had these memories, or you were reading these books when you were younger. I mean, and then ultimately it kind of, you know, manifested itself into your life, into this path. So, you know, one of the biggest things I've seen with a lot of healers, all right, is, you know, they do stay in the love and light spectrum a lot of the time. But you said that you've kind of went into the darkness a little bit. And, you know, I'm going to tell you that's a brave thing, man. It's a brave thing to go down into your darkness. So like one of the biggest things I want to talk to you about is collective correction, how healing ourselves ultimately helps heal the collective. Because at this point in time, I feel that this is something a lot of the conscious collective has still to hop onto. You know, one of the biggest things that I say is, you know, in order to bring in this new earth frequency, in order to step into this, we have to walk into a new way of being. We have to walk into a new way of life. And, you know, when we do this, we can't be dragging the old ways with us in there. So, you know, one of the biggest things I'd like to dive into with you real quick is how important doing this work is, because I feel a lot of people are still missing this point.
Oh, yeah. It is the most important thing that anyone can be doing. And it can show up differently. It can show up differently from person to person. And we definitely understand that not everybody has a life structure in which they can spend 20 hours a week on collective energy work individually, like the way that I do with some of my collaborators. But the inner work is the outer work. The only way we are going to make beneficial, lasting change is by each person taking radical accountability and responsibility for the self and doing the inner work that then ripples outward into the world and affects the collective consciousness in the required way, so that we can shift into what I call ancient future Tara Earth. So I believe that we've been Gaia and we've been Tara and we've been Earth, and that we are, when people talk about New Earth, I believe we are recreating a bridge to Tara, which would be our kind of semi-etheric or a little bit less dense version of Earth. Yeah, the inner work is the utmost. That is all, like, that's what there is. That's where we can each start and where we can each be a radical change maker.
I would definitely agree with that. I was just writing down Tara because that is the first reference that I've ever heard for that. Let's dive into that for just a second, because I know about Gaia and I know about Earth that we're on now, but I've never heard it referred to as Tara. If you don't mind diving into that for a little bit. Yeah, that's a new one for me. I'd like to learn a little bit.
Sure. A lot of people call it Terra, Terra. That has never felt quite resonant to me. And we was myself and my close friend and quantum collaborator, Yael 1111. We're exploring this in one of our joint BQH sessions, Beyond Quantum Healing. And we had been getting, prior to this session, messages and wording from the intuitive energy streams with which we work that were referring to Terra or Tara, but it was really clear that it wasn't Terra, Terra. I was seeing it in my mind's eye, Tara. Well, and in this BQH session, we got confirmation that in the current reality that we are in, and of course we are in a quantum realm, and there's many timelines and many different versions of existence that other people may be tapping into, and so on and so forth. But in our current reality, the understanding that we came away with was that where we are going, or rather what we are creating is a return. And of course, when I say return, I really mean making something old new for this now, which is another thing that I say that I do. So I don't think we're going back to the way things used to be. We are actually co-creating and co-rendering a new place that is also here under a name that we have used before. And we were really, it was really clear to us that it was Tara, T-A-R-A. So that was just my own, our own insight. We've since met a few other women, other practitioners who have received similar information here and there. So
that's very cool. No, I'm very interested in that, because I know, at least in my eyes, you know, when we do, I mean, at least at the subjective level for now, which we're doing, you know, this is kind of, and that's one of the reasons why I truly like Sarah the Alchemist, because she describes ascension in a way that actually makes sense. And at least for me, and she describes ascension as channeling the divine consciousness and the higher self into the current avatar that you currently are now, in order to manifest, the best possible timeline for the shortest outcome to your evolution or your enlightenment or your ascension. However, I know that I at least feel that if enough of the human collective does reach this frequency, at least at some point in time, that we could potentially shift modalities. And what I mean by that is we could move into this Tara. More of us would be perceiving this Tara, and we would be experiencing this existence this way. So no, that was new to me. I was really interested in that. I had never heard that before. And that's really cool. You got that kind of insight and that information. So no, I'm very interested to hear some other things. So one of the other things I actually was a huge fan of, what you've been saying on like X and like Facebook and a lot of these other things too, is you're talking about true masculine and feminine energy. And I think that as of right now, the conscious collective is starting to get an idea of what this actually is. But there's still a lot of what I would say, not delusion per se, but there's I feel like we aren't exactly moving into these energies as we should. I feel there's a lot of what I'd say exterior circumstances. I think a lot of people are still kind of looking in the wrong directions for this. So if you don't mind kind of explaining for our listeners, because I actually had a show with Mindful Warrior Within last Sunday when we were talking about what true divine masculine is. Let's hear your opinion on what the true embodiment of the divine masculine is and what the true embodiment of the divine feminine is.
Sure. Yeah, I actually speak on this topic quite a bit. Sometimes I will use different terms like magnetic and electric, or yin and yang, and the reason for that, but the post the other day that you read, or yesterday, I will get very clear, since more people seem to understand feminine and masculine. I will use these terms as well. But I have been noticing, so I speak on the polarity topic quite a bit. And I guess first, for those who are into the juicy paradox of all things the way I am, I will say that ultimately we are in a realm in which we have agreed to duality or polarity, but that we need to hold the understanding or the comprehension and the deep knowing that that's for here. And there is some kind of, there is some element of illusion to it. So I'm carrying all these energy streams, as are you, despite the gendered body that we're in. However, that said, I have been noticing that a lot of what I am seeing online as like polarity coaching or whatever, relationship coaching within spiritual spaces seems to be pretty distorted and doesn't necessarily encourage people towards true initiation into the true embodiment of the energy in a healthy way. Like I was seeing a lot of codependency. I was seeing a lot of suggestion towards relationship that wasn't really healthy, but it looked typically very masculine here and very feminine there, but we're not there was a lack of cohesion and like lots of rules. So that said, what I wrote about yesterday was the need for this strong masculine energy. What I have noticed and what I have had been encountering with lots of women that have been clients, friends, collaborators, people that I've met, is there is an issue with, I'll just be frank, men coming into spirituality and maybe sometimes in an effort to open their heart or come into a softer way of being, or bringing forward childhood wounding into kind of the surface and core personality that they're expressing. So they're like a little boy instead of an embodied man. We're having major issues with too many men falling into kind of a distorted feminine energy, if you will, in a way that does not honor. And some of this is from fear. We're like, ultimately, I see a human before I see a gender. And I think that that's what we should all strive to do, is see another soul. And we all have the same basic like hierarchy of needs, if you will. We all need water. We all need food. We all need shelter, and we all need love, and we need emotional connection. So, and I experience this with all clients, whether it's a male client or a female client. This, relationship issues are often are mirrored. And so basically, I guess I was saying, I'm just noticing that we have an epidemic right now of women really, really seeking a honest, noble, strong man, in a way that we are, men are sometimes falling short because they want to be soft, or they want to be open, they want to be trustworthy, but they're not retaining the wildness. In fact, I think you offered that terminology yesterday, is we're looking for the embodiment of a gentle warrior, or a kind protector. Somebody who doesn't have to pick the sword up, but will if it's necessary. He's not living by the sword. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. No. We were discussing that last Sunday, and you've brought up a lot of really valid points, because, like, as a man, I feel, as a man, real quick before I dive into this, we do have a comment from a viewer. And this is Kyle. Hey, Kyle, how's it going? So one thing I'm going to say to you, Kyle, definitely, I get where you're coming from on this, but we're talking about the aspects of energies and polarities. We're not applying gender to the divine consciousness itself. We are talking about the manifestations and the projections in a realm that has duality of the divine. So we're not applying gender to divinity. We are just talking about the different embodied energies that the divine expresses itself in. And one thing, even as just Sarah said, we both embody, male and females have masculine and feminine energy. So it's just a matter of the different balance between the two, at least in my opinion. But no, as you were saying, Sarah, no, exactly. I think what it is we have, at least in the conscious collective, we've seen a little bit of a schism in ideology with this. And one of the biggest things I think that led to this was 2020, because not only did that divide the general public of the U.S. and everywhere else in the world, it divided the spiritual community as well. And that was. I still think personally, they knew we were coming. They knew we were growing, and a lot of that situation had to do with us. And that is just something I've theorized a little bit throughout. I can't prove it. Don't get me wrong, but I've definitely theorized it. But we had this schism, and we had a lot of people start to, me, I believe, freedom is a very spiritual thing. I believe bodily autonomy is a very spiritual thing, all of these things. And you had a lot of people who kind of, moved towards the narrative side of things. And I can, in some ways I've grown to understand it, but I'll digress. What the point I'm getting to is a lot of the spiritual community they divided themselves up to the right and the left. I mean, that's what I saw the ideologies go. And, when we look at a lot of the masculine ideology that comes from the side of the right, we see a lot of the what I would call almost like the primitive-esque aspect of it, just being being a animal, being a savage, being strong in the physical aspect, and having the strength and all of that in the physical aspect. But when it comes to the emotional and mental aspects, they don't address that situation. And then we saw a lot of the spiritual community that went over to the left, as you were saying, like kind of like a botched version of the feminine energy almost, is how they started to end up to go that route. And what I think really happened with that was, I think you froze up a little bit there. Are you okay? Can you hear me? Uh-oh, Sarah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're breaking up a little. Yeah, I can see you now. You're still kind of laggy.
Try to join from my phone.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. Go right ahead. Yeah, try and join from your phone. I'll hang tight for you real quick.
Yeah, I'll try to join from the phone. Maybe it's the Wi-Fi here.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Take your time.
Okay. Hello. Okay. Okay. There we go. Maybe this.
All right, I'm gonna kick this one off, and then I'll bring you on right here.
We'll see if this works better.
Hey, there we go. Yeah. It looks like we have a audio lag on that one.
Yeah. I need to close this one, right?
Thanks for hanging.
There. Gosh, sorry.
There we go.
Thank you for being patient with me.
No problem. I understand. No, totally. So as we were saying, I think what's happened is.
Okay, why can't I hear you now?
Can you hear me now? Here, hold on. I got you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. It says everything's enabled.
Let me see here real quick.
Let's see.
Thanks for hanging with us.
It's really weird.
You can't hear me at all?
I don't know. I enabled microphone, so I'm not sure why I can't hear you. It's really odd.
All right, hold on one second.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
It's quiet. It's quiet, but I could hear you a little bit.
All right, cool. Good. Let me try and move the mic a little bit closer for you. Here we go.
Yeah.
So
sorry about that, guys.
No worries. Thanks for everybody being patient. But no, as we were talking about, I think what has happened is because of that, we had that schism in the spiritual community back in 2020. That kind of defuncted the masculine energy, and I feel in a lot of ways it also defuncted aspects of the feminine energy as well. I think I do think a lot of these events that occur, like, yes, they are to jar up the public, but they know we're growing. They know we're growing in number. They know we're growing in strength. And before 2020, a lot of the community was on a very unified front. And that was dangerous to them. But no, I'll digress. As we were saying, no, absolutely. I feel like what has happened is not only have we had a lot of these events that have distorted this energy, but we look at the archetypal energies that this collective is portraying as masculinity. We see people like Andrew Tate. We see people like, these individuals who are not really relaying the most positive aspects of masculinity. So, and I mean, I've seen it happen with feminine energy too. I mean, when you look at a lot of, now women who, by certain people, now women who want to have children and want to live that life, they're called breeders by certain people. And, they just feel like there's an attack, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. I do feel like there's some kind of attack on the true embodiment of these energies, because they fear it in the purest forms.
Absolutely. And I think an important part that we can like jump in or throw into the container here is that there's clearly a war on testosterone, a war on healthy, balanced, female hormones as well. And so that trying to say, shall we just say, make men tired and weaker and have less endurance, less stamina to live this life and do the work. And same for women. Like I'm seeing, you're involved with health and fitness. So that was kind of my entryway, like the health biohacking and figuring out exercise years ago to feel better and so on and so forth, really got me looking at, the attempts, especially here in the US with all of the, chemicals in the food and all sorts of agents within our dietary system that are not allowed other places in the world. Even like the xenoestrogen in plastic is a concern. And they know that causes feminization of men and so on and so forth. So like, I think that was something I wanted to add about, why is this happening, or why are, or like you said, we have a bad representation. We have a bad man, we have a violent man, or archetypal violent or harmful men that many will think of as being like a dominant or strong protector, and nobody wants to be in that violent energy. I've had clients who had a violent father, and the response to that was to be as far away from that energetic presentation, in a way that maybe made him, made these guys less able to hold the masculine, if that makes sense.
No, that makes absolute sense. No, and I've dealt with that, and that was some of the own healing that I had to go through on my own. It was it's something that can be a very strongly damaging thing. And I mean, that's something you brought up, a very valid point too. There is, I mean, we talked about that on Sunday a little bit, so I won't go like too heavy into it right now. But no, there's a physical aspect to it. No, we can go into it a little bit. But there is a physical aspect to it as well. And I feel it's happening to women in a lot of ways too. There's certain aspects that are these attacks on, because even the xenoestrogens, when women get their estrogen out of balance too, it can cause a lot of very big issues.
For sure.
And so honestly, no, that was something I wanted to touch on you about, because I think we need a clear vision, on both sides of this. And, I mean, obviously one of the biggest things I'm going to say to everybody here is that you're going to be your own self. Okay, like do not try to compare yourself to anybody else when it's coming to this. As Sarah's saying, we have to do the work in order to discover this part about ourselves and to find this balance within ourselves. And I think that's something that is going to be tailored to each and every one of us individually. And that's the beautiful thing about it. So one thing I wanted to ask you about too, because I've seen you mention this a couple times, and I mean, when I brought this up to you, you said you hadn't really, dove into it a lot. So I've kind of dove into it a little bit because I've had some experiences with this.
Sure.
So I think one of the biggest things that we on the spiritual side right now is we have to have discernment when it comes to messing around with entities or other kinds of energies. I feel like right now at this point in time, at least what I've experienced myself, there's a lot of, I'm not saying tricksters are a bad thing. There's a positive polarity to the trickster too. So I'm going to kind of go ahead and throw it down on this way. I'm going to say the negative aspect of the trickster. So there's a lot of these running around right now. And, I've seen you bring up Metatron a couple of times talking about this. And and I've and one thing I'm going to say too is that yes, I know the New Age community, a lot of the New Age community thinks Metatron is a good thing, but I've been kind of seeing a little bit different. You know, one
Yes.
of the biggest things I think we deal with at this time is we do deal with inversions. I do think in some way that we are dealing with inversions, and a lot of things that are presented to us as being beneficial, I think we should be taking a second look at and using our discernment with that. I want to hear your thoughts on this, coming from a healer practitioner who's definitely dealt with this a lot, because I feel like a lot of people, I myself was like that at a time, and then I ran into some entities that led me astray, and then
Yes.
that is what made me think twice about this topic. So yeah, let's hear your opinion on this.
So cultivating sacred discernment is the number one thing that I recommend everybody work on doing to come into their own energetic containment and protection. So discernment is crucial. And I guess we'll get to Metatron. I want to say that how you like outline that is perfect. If you are not in discernment, you will be led astray. And the New Age teaching or the New Age idea that everything is for your good is only true from a very quantum objective place, way outside of this realm. And when we are here in it, we have to bring the discernment, because we are in a system that has tried to keep us from our evolution and our remembrance. And there are very real energies, whether we can see them at all times or not, that are feeding on human life force and soul essence. So that said, there are lots of tricksters, there are maskers, there are beings that can, kind of do a hologram, or they can affect the mental realm in a way that you are creating your own image, or perceiving something in a way that isn't accurate. So Metatron, in my experience, is likely an energy collective, as most things that have a name are. You could even say that each of us is an energy collective, or we are a small part of a greater whole. So Metatron seems to be part of an energy collective that is a regressive energy. In my experience, it is not any kind of a benevolent angelic. You could probably call it a fallen angelic if you would like, but even just the word angelic doesn't feel totally appropriate, but I do believe it's from the same source. But there's an affiliation, or there's an affiliation with a group that we have come to call the Mecha Angels in our work. They're like these they're not from our source. They're not from our cosmos. They're like a very they do look like mechanical angels, kind of, or like kind of a transhumanist angelic, and they're very dangerous, and they are something that comes up from time to time in my energy work practice, helping people get free from. And the entity or energies known as Metatron has affiliation in my work with some mecha angels that we are in a spiritual battle or spiritual war with. So
that's very interesting. The reason why I say that is because, when we look at Metatron, the back history of Metatron, he was originally Enoch, supposedly, according to that. Supposedly, yes. But that kind of makes me think a little bit too. When we look at the Gnostic version of events, of the old days, the creation story, this realm. It's very possible, because when we look at the Book of Enoch, and we look at actually 3 books of Enoch at this point, we see that this is based in the Old Testament. This is based in these times, and one of the huge Gnostic beliefs is that the God of the Old Testament is not the true God. He was a demiurge. And so that kind of makes you think that if the demiurge did indeed scoop Enoch up and, quote unquote, bring him to heaven, could we be looking at something potentially different? But no, that's very interesting. I've never heard of the Mecha Angels. Like, that's interesting. I do believe I did encounter something like that during a entheogenic experience.
Oh,
And
yes. That's a
yeah,
common way that they'll kind of get a hold of people or talk to people. Sure.
no,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's what ended up leading me astray. So like, I mean, that's you know, that's very interesting. That's pretty insightful, because I think a lot of people, just as I was explaining, they're really gung ho. They want to connect with other things. I think that's where it comes from. You know, is like a lot of us have this deep yearning and this deep want to connect to other things outside of ourselves, or you know, connect with another kind of life, something that we deem on either a higher level of evolution or a higher level of intelligence.
Yep.
And I think that's what's doing that to us there, because one of the biggest things that you know, being human is a special thing, you know, and like we can't cast that aside, you know, to reach out for, you know, something that we feel is beyond human, because ultimately, from what I'm seeing, we're very special ourselves. And, you know, that's something that we have to hold near and dear. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I guess first thing I wanted to say is I have connected a few times with an energy that I will call Enoch, and I do believe that you know, everything is available within the quantum. So I'm not saying that the idea that he was scooped up and taken away by the demiurge may not be accurate in some timelines, but the energy that I've connected with is a true it felt like a true benevolent and initiating energy.
Okay.
That seemed so I was actually, in preparation for talking to you, really feeling into this, and I think depending upon which timeline we're looking at, there are some in which that is accurate, that they're, but the idea that they're one and the same, or that Enoch became Metatron, may be accurate in certain timelines. And then there's also the highest, most divine, expanded, benevolent outcome, is that there is also an Enochian energy that is legitimate and helpful, and seems to work to initiate certain humans. So I wanted to share that. And then, as far as humans are hungry. Yet we are divine. We are divine. I believe that we are in and of ourselves. And it took me a long time to actually use the word angel, because I deconstructed Christianity as I came into this, and I was very hesitant and thought that it was all Christianese, and we were just repackaging stuff that wasn't true, and so on and so forth. And what I have found is that the angelic realm is a really beautiful, important, varied version of source consciousness. It's a very important aspect of source energy, source consciousness, and I believe that humans are part of it. So I had to really go through a process of dissolving some religious connotations to that word. And I do believe that we are human angelics, and humans are hungry for spiritual experiences. The reason we all go seeking is because inside each one of us there is a yearning and a longing for home. And home is in this body and on this earth, and it's also so much greater than that. And I believe we are all seeking a connection that we come here longing for. Falling into time and falling into matter is a big deal. It is a big deal to choose to come into time and come into matter from being part of other places with God source. So yes, we are divine. I believe we are part of the angelic realm in a multitude of ways, I guess.
Well, you know, because that's why I kind of smiled when you said that, because I did have an experience that basically told me that humans and angels are one and the same.
Yes.
And that kind of hit deep for me when you said that, because on some of the things I've experienced on my own personal level, I've gotten that. And you know, it's very interesting that that is a big part of our true nature that I feel is hidden from us to a degree here.
Yes.
And that's why I joke. I posted a meme the other day. It was the universe wearing a VR headset, and it said Maya, and it's like the Maya quest. Immediately you wear it upon incarnating in this realm, but it's almost like that part of us is being hidden. I feel there's a lot of other aspects of us being hidden, and I want to touch with you about that. But number one, I want to talk to you about timelines, because you brought this up.
Sure.
And this is something I want to pick your brain about, because you are in the quantum healing world, and you connect with a lot of different things. I feel our timeline has just gotten a little interesting. And the reason why I'm saying that is I'm seeing some very strange things that I never thought I would see. I mean, also too, I mean, even if we're talking on the political level of things, I'll kind of go up from the political level. But the first thing is seeing a democratic socialist work for Donald Trump, seeing all of this kind of like evolve the way it is. I never thought I'd see Bernie Sanders work for Donald Trump. I think that is just the weirdest thing in the world to me. And then we see almost this, a lot of people feel like we're entering into a more positive, higher timeline at this time, that we chose this more positive, higher timeline. Me, of course, based on what I've been through, I've been kind of in this conscious collective for going on 17 years at this point. I'm still kind of sitting back and observing and trying to take it all in and really trying to evaluate what's going on, because it's like, it almost seems the energy just took on a new form. So I kind of want to get your opinion on this. I mean, there's a lot of people right now who feel we could have potentially entered into a more higher positive timeline, but I feel like if anything is too good to be true, we should have discernment with that. So I want to get your thoughts on that, on what you think, because I want to know if you've maybe gotten any messages about that as well in your work.
Sure. Yes, like you, I am sitting back and observing. I don't tend to make a snap judgment about feeling like we're on a great timeline, or oh no, we missed a step and now we're on the really bad timeline. Timelines are always in flux, and they are everybody has multiple personal potential timelines, which I see as spirals. So when I'm in the Akash, the reason my Akashic Records readings are quantum is because I am in the quantum field within the Akashic Records, and I see personal and collective timeline possibilities. And the closer they are to the person's energy body, the more likely in that moment, or in that snapshot of time, if you will, the more likely they are to being like co-created or created and manifested into fruition, or into reality, into matter. So my view about timelines is pretty nuanced and pretty complex, because there are so many of them. And there are so many, we are the time makers, keepers, and weavers. Maybe not everybody, but part of the work that I do involves pretty significant work with time as a substance, because we created it. We as humanity created time to put a time limit on how, from what I've been shown, how long we were here on Earth school or Earth realm. I don't believe it's a prison. I believe it has been made sometimes to seem like one. But yes, are we on a higher timeline or a better timeline? I think that remains to be seen. I feel very positive about the direction that it feels like we are going as a collective in terms of consciousness evolution, if you will.
I like that.
I think that there's going to be hiccups along the way, as there always are. Like I talk about this often. We came to do this. We came to dissolve the systems that were causing harm and to create a new way. And we will rebirth out of the ashes or the remnants of what we have to dismantle and dissolve. And it doesn't have to be like a violent destruction, but we are the apocalypse. We are the unveiling. I've had personal apocalypse. You've had an apocalypse. We are living an apocalypse, which means, lifting the veil or just dissolving the veil. So yes, I think we're on a nice, hopeful trajectory. I think it's going to continue to be periodically very challenging. And I also believe and know deeply within myself that it's exactly what we came to do.
Absolutely. No, and I like how you said that, because it's almost like we're the harbingers, but in a good way. Like it's like we're here to destroy the Maya system and all of these systems within Maya. So no, I'm with you on that. I think, one of the biggest things this community likes to do sometimes is they just latch on and put all their good faith at a certain outcome, which, I mean, I can't 100% blame them sometimes, but at the same time too, I'm glad you're taking the stance of being objective about it. And, you're observing it. You're not getting yourself attached, to any of these outcomes. And I think that's the best thing we need to do, because what happens is, at least in my eyes, when we get attachments and expectations, is we're always let down. We're always let down on this. And, like I said, I've been watching this for a while at this point, and it always seems like there's something on the back end. So, there could be some kind of struggle we could face collectively. There could be potentially another sleight of hand that's played on us. I mean, there's a lot of different potentials. And the one thing you brought up, I'm really happy about, is the prison planet thing. That to me is, that's a rabbit hole that you visit. You don't stay there. I've said this many times. You don't buy a house there. You don't, you visit there, you get a plane ticket, you maybe get a cruise there or something like that. You check it out and you're like, all right, cool, I'm going back, because that's a trap, at least in my eyes. But I do feel, at least personally, in my opinion, I'm going to pick your brain on this, I do feel like the reincarnation cycle is a trap, but it's almost like it's not as simplistic as that. It's not that it's a trap. Yes. It's a combination of, you have to learn it's a trap. You have to go through the learning experience here to understand that. And I mean, if you didn't go through the learning experience here, you would not understand that. So, that's something we talk about a lot in the spiritual community, is the reincarnation cycle being a trap. And I want to know what your thoughts are on that. Maybe give some kind of clarity, because I feel it's a little bit of both. I feel it's a school and a trap. And, and one thing I've seen, which I'm sure you've seen too, is the answers when we're the answers to these things, that we're discussing, these topics, they never really ever sway in any extreme of the polarity. They always happen to be in the center.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah, let's hear what you think.
Yeah. So essentially, soul theft is very real. The shattering or fracturing of consciousness and soul is very real, and that is what is occurring in a reincarnation trap. So just to put a little different direction on it, significant amounts of my work in quantum clearing, quantum healing, shamanic visioning is helping people retrieve. In fact, I write on Twitter quite a bit about, we're here on a massive soul retrieval mission, and stealing or preventing a soul from leaving when it is time for it to go is a theft. That's a soul theft. If the soul is tricked, coerced, or otherwise trapped or kept from going on its own sovereign journey. So I am not certain. I know for years now people have been saying the reincarnation trap or reincarnation is over. I haven't looked at that too closely myself. I actually tend to believe that is likely, or that we are in the process of dismantling the false web net of the distorted matrices that are allowing any kind of reincarnation trap to take place and soul theft to continue. So no, I agree. I actually totally agree with you, and you're right. The answer is always seems to be the middle ground. So that's why I talk about the middle way of the heart, the connected heart womb or heart sacral as well. Like the middle way is the way of the heart, and the answer is usually, no matter what the question is, it's usually not on either of the intense poles, and it's somewhere right in the middle is the nuanced shades of gray, most accurate, helpful answer that you can find for any given thing. So yeah, I think Earth was meant to be a school and a playground. Like I think it was intended to be like a school and a playground, and there was some important ideas and fun things, and guarding stargates potentially is one theory I've heard. But the parasitic system that has developed that created a reincarnation trap has made it seem or functioned as a prison, even though that isn't the design or the intention. And through remembering our own sovereignty and who and what you are, you can overcome any kind of soul trap or reincarnation trap too, is what I believe. So that's why doing the work of awareness, of consciousness expansion is so important right now, while we're in the body. Yeah.
Well, no, absolutely. And that's why me, like, don't get me wrong. I love Gnosticism. I do. I love a lot of it, but I cannot, to me, at least in my eyes, the physical realm is not completely evil, because if everything is of the one, the monad, or anything and everything, we are these we're not only these subjective focal points. The monad, the one, is all of creation, and the physical realm sits inside of creation. So, and even when we look at it, really, if we want to break it down, the demiurge is of the divine too. I like it when we really break it down. So it's like, I do not think the physical realm is a completely evil place, like a lot of really hardcore Gnostics do. I think there's even when we talk about the Maya of nature, so when we break down the two types of Maya, we have the societal Maya and we have the Maya of nature. The Maya of nature is a very beneficial thing for us. Like, it's very spiritual, it's very developmental for us. So at that point, it's like that's where I fall away from that Gnostic train of thought that we're on some prison planet, we're captured here, we have the ability to leave. It's just a matter of doing that work, like you were saying, and understanding the process of what happens, at least trying to gain your own understanding of the process of what happens when you do eventually leave here. And I feel that whatever form of meditation that you wish to do, that is a really good way to start. And what do you think about that? Yeah, sure.
I absolutely agree with that. And what's really important to talk about here is how you noted the demiurge is also of source. And in no matter what terminology or kind of paradigm we're using, that's exactly what I'm saying about these regressive groups that we're calling aliens. I believe are groups who were, many of them from our same source, who essentially would be of the oneness with us, who were some way, somehow tricked or otherwise coerced into believing they were cut off from source and thus created it in every aspect of their beingness. And so a lot of the, alien to me doesn't mean someone who lives on another planet. Alien in my vernacular and in my energy work practice has come to mean somebody or a group, a lineage that believes that they are not part of the oneness anymore and has thus created it and become parasitic and regressive in their, but yet, they're still of the same source. And so there's redemption. The demiurge could be redeemed. These regressive groups that have been harming people, there is a redemption path available to all. Whether or not they choose it is their sovereign free will as well. But it is reflective. I guess I'm supposed to say these groups continuing is reflective of the state of the collective consciousness and the collective heart of humanity, which is what we are doing in our work, trying to help bring awareness and healing and integration to, so that we can all move beyond this frequency bandwidth, I think, where things are denser and lower. So yeah, I totally agree with what you said.
No, absolutely not. And I think, I think one of the biggest things too, and I feel before we start winding down, there's one other thing I definitely want to talk to you about. But no, I feel what this is a lot of what we're dealing. One of the biggest things I've always said, and you'll probably agree with me on this, is I think there's two reasons. We would say there's no, well, actually, technically three. There's no 100% correct spirituality or religion here, and this is going to kind of dive into what I'm saying. So I mean, but the first one I would say is, words fall short for describing what's really going on here. Language starts to break down. Words just are too flat to even try to describe this. The second one I feel is, yes, there are energies here that do not want you to have the truth. And there is a lot of information that is leading people astray. And I also feel like the ultimate spiritual doctrine is the one you create for yourself. I think that is the truest one. And that is the reason why I call them guidelines, basically, is what I call a lot of the spiritual books, a lot of their guidelines. And I mean, a lot of people have, their own choice of guideline. I'm definitely an omnist. I love all of the guidelines. I think there's good stuff in all of them, you know what I mean? And then you have people, but nonetheless, what I'm saying is I think a lot of people, due to the being led astray when it comes to certain things like this, is we have almost like a self-victimization, kind of like what we were talking about with the prison planet rabbit hole, with a lot of these other negative connotations. So one thing I think that comes from is humanity is kind of on a collective level at a sticking point with its healing. I've kind of talked about how I want to do. I mean, I even brought it up at the beginning of this episode. One of my main goals here is to try and get this conscious collective on a unified front now. It's going to be a crazy battle, but I'm ready for it. But at the same time, I think one thing we also not experience on a collective level, but on a subjective level, we've come across these sticking points in our healing, and a lot of people get stuck in these sticking points. And one of my best things that I like to tell people is to change your whole environment just for a little bit. You know what I mean? To stop going around the same places every day, stop going around the same people every day, stop going around, the same coffee shop or things like that, and completely alter and shift your perspective into a different environment, even if it's just temporarily. But, I know that still sometimes doesn't work for a lot of people. So as a quantum healer, what in your eyes are good solutions for people who have reached these sticking points in their healing? Yeah, because I mean, we've all gotten there before. There's one that I just recently got over, and it took 3 fucking years. So I needed I got the perspective shift I needed. But I know a lot of people get frustrated with this. So coming from a quantum healer, what do you think is a really good way or a really good method of trying to help us move past these sticking points in our healing?
So I do believe that when we encounter a really sticking point on an individual or collective level, but I'll speak individually since I'm working with individuals in clearing type work, it typically means that there is opportunity for depth quantum clearing. When we have something that can be very, very difficult and very challenging to get over or to move through and integrate, I often find that there are layered, stacked, interwoven reality versions of our soul's experience that is having some kind of effect on this now. This is also generally where, as a quantum healer, I would be looking for Do we have some kind of a mind loop program that has been essentially projected or implanted that is preventing somebody from embracing and accepting and receiving the healing they are trying to facilitate for themselves? So that's where some of the, do we have an outside influence? Because people in this community need to know that we are sovereign, we are whole, we are powerful, and there has been, everybody has been targeted. Everybody that they can see has the potential to self-realize, self-actualize, and come into the power and wholeness that we have always been. In that remembrance has been targeted in some way or another to try to prevent the elevation, expansion, and awakening into the awareness of all that is. So really, it's going to be getting really brutally honest with yourself. So if you're not somebody who's interested in energy work, but even if you are interested in energy work, the first thing has to be getting really fucking honest with yourself. There's no other way. And you have to come into so my own healing work or my own integration work, the clarification and refinement work that I am engaged in every day so that I can do what I do for other people, it has been acknowledging all my own stuff, admitting it for what it is, and seeing it from a nuanced, multiple perspectives, and taking accountability for all of it without shame or guilt, just in complete grace, love, and compassion for the self and for all others that have been affected or part of my journey. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, and the thing you brought up the most, which I really resonate with, is the self-honesty. It's like, because one of the biggest things is, we're our own biggest cheerleaders. We have to be, right? Like, we need to be. That's how, we get through this. We have to have that love for ourselves. We have to have that, confidence in ourselves. We have to have that self-respect, that self-worth. But one of the biggest things, of overcoming, things that fall out of balance per se, when we're not being honest with ourselves about certain things. And one of the biggest things I feel is the universe will start to show you, the divine will start to show you that you're not being honest with yourself. I'm a huge believer that our internal existence is definitely mirrored to us in our outside experience. We will view the struggles and the trauma that we face within ourselves in our outside experience, whether it's presented to us through people, situations. The universe loves symbolism. That's its language, in my opinion. It loves to use that. So no, most certainly. You brought up the self-honesty point. That is a huge thing. And I do think there is an outside influence affecting a lot of people like us right now. That is one thing I will say, and that's why I've noticed, because when I have certain thoughts, or certain kinds of thoughts, I'm like, that doesn't seem like me. That's not something Steve would think. So that's made me pay attention, because I do think that excuse me, there is some kind of outside influence that is kind of trying to dampen us. And I mean, both you and I see it with the shadow ban that we experience.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's like, oh man, like the fact that spiritual content is being shadow banned at this point in time is like one of the biggest red flags to me, because don't get me wrong, I get the conspiracies. I get like the extreme political things. I understand that, but spiritual content, like telling people that they should love themselves and be empowered, that's being shadow banned. So it's like that was the big indicator for me that there's something strange going on. And I mean, you've experienced this as well. I mean, what do you think potentially this outside influence is? I mean, do you think it is these negative collectives or these regressive collectives? I personally feel that our establishments also, I'm not discounting that it could be these regressive collectives, but I also feel our establishments have gained certain tech or have uncovered certain tech that they should not have at this point in time. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so my sense is that It can come from a myriad of different directions, if you will, different directions. And the establishment most definitely is part of that. And typically they have gotten some of these technologies or things that are being used in that way from some of these groups. One that I see quite a bit is some kind of frequency that is like frequency weaponry, or frequency energy that is directed specifically at individuals or groups of individuals. And whether that's coming from an establishment or a different sort of a group can vary, but this is common. This is common to try to affect the thought process and stuff. Does that make sense?
No. It completely does. It completely does, because, I've had experiences myself where I do feel like something has tried to get to me. Luckily, though, I have ironcladded my subtle body at this point. There's nothing getting in at this point
Nothing's
anymore.
in.
But no, I wanted to get your opinion on that, because I know a lot of us in the Conscious Collective, we experience this. We feel like a lot of times that we are being fucked with. And the craziest part about this is, yes, we cannot prove it. But when we start, I think anecdotal evidence is a thing. And, a lot of people might disagree with me on this, but, when we have, for instance, one of the biggest things, I like to bring up in this aspect is the Fatima incident. I've talked about this on my show way back in season 1 for you guys who have been with me for a while. But the Fatima incident occurred in the early 1900s, where these 3 children were greeted by what they believed was an apparition of the Virgin Mary. Yep. And the Virgin Mary had the kids, I think it was over 120 people, if I'm correct. I think it was around that number. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong, if you know what I'm talking about. But you have 100 people there, and they all experienced and saw something. Some people thought it was a religious experience. Some people thought they witnessed some kind of technology, but nonetheless, we have 120 people that saw something.
Sure.
My thing is this with the anecdotal evidence, though, and I'm sure you'll agree, is like, we can't prove they saw anything. Obviously, this was at the time when, photos were very, they weren't as advanced as they were today. We didn't really have video as we do today at this point, but we have 120 people who are claiming they've seen something. And it's like, at that point, 100, it's too, that would be too, the 120 people can't hold an elaborate hoax like that together. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? They can't hold something like that together and keep it concrete. On top of that, also, we have people like you and I and a lot of other people in the Conscious Collective that have experienced things like gang stalking, that have experienced like things like them being messed with. So,
Absolutely.
although we can't prove it, I think there is definitely something going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Myself and other people I know who are engaged in similar work, we have learned to shield very well. And we do receive directed energetic attacks on a regular basis for helping people get free. I totally agree with you, like about the different people of that 120 perceived things in a different way, but everybody had experienced something. We assign meaning. We are interpreting through our filters, but it's still very real to us, and we know that something has occurred. I totally agree. I work with targeted people who consider themselves targeted individuals pretty extensively. And there is no way, in my experience, that the people that I have connected with are imagining this, hallucinating it, or just straight making it up. Like, you and I know what we've experienced in similar ways as well. Yeah.
And I know, and I think, and I think that's, when we look at these broad range of experiences, and and some of certain things, there's certain instances where, yes, I could see how somebody could think, it's a mental health issue, but at the same
Sure.
time, there are these instances though where their technology they've been using has been drastically altered. Like these very, very strange things. I mean, one of the biggest things I've talked about is there was a woman in Florida who was medically gang stalked, and they basically called her phone and somehow they were somehow able to portray her aunt's voice exactly how she sounds. And the aunt said, you know, hey, I'm ready to get picked up from the hospital. And then when she went to the hospital, she basically got gang stalked there. She got kind of gaslit, harassed a little bit. They sent her in weird directions. And then finally, she said she found like a good person there who brought her to her aunt's room. And she walked in and she goes, hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I got your call, you know, that you were ready to be picked up. And her aunt looked at her and goes, I never called you. What are you talking about? So when we see these, like at least these profound alterations in technology, I do think these are legitimate cases.
Right. I agree. Yeah, I agree very much so. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. So alrighty, Miss Sarah, we're gonna wind down for the night.
Sounds good.
Real quick, I have in the link for both the Rumble and the YouTube video description, I have all three of your social medias. I have your X account, I have your IG, and I have your Facebook. And I know your link tree or your link with all of your stuff is on there as well. And I know people can get there to find you. So if there's anywhere else that we can find you and check out what you're doing, why don't you let the audience know now?
Sure. To book one-on-one single energy work sessions with me or packages, that is currently done at stan.store/Sarah Descending. And I also have a new membership that you can email me directly about, sarah.descending@proton.me. Otherwise, yeah, connect with me on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere is fine. And that information is shared on like all of those bios or about me type spots too. Thank you so much, Stephen. It was awesome to meet you.
Yeah, for sure. It was good to sit down with you. If you don't mind hanging out just for a couple minutes after we sign off, I wanted to run something by you. But nonetheless, guys, thank you for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday Live podcast. Like I said in the beginning, guys, I have some big stuff planned for next year. We're going to get ourselves on a unified front one way or another. And I don't care if I have to fight this until I leave this plane of existence. We are going to do it, and we're going to find a way. But nonetheless, guys, I have Don Rogers of After Dark Show joining me next week. It'll be BG-Cast After Dark Volume 2. So it'll be nice to have Don back on the show. I hope you're watching, buddy. And other than that, guys, thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate Sarah being here, especially on such short notice. Really appreciate everybody who was tuned in tonight. And other than that, guys, have a good night. I will see you next Wednesday. Take care.